How to overcome childhood emotional neglect. If you're experiencing isolation, loneliness, and a lack of fulfillment in relationships, you could have childhood emotional neglect. This is video number 3 of a 3-part series. This is Dr. Spencer Coaches. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to treat yourself if you have childhood emotional neglect. I created 2 other videos. With the first one's the 8 signs of childhood emotional neglect. The second one were 12 basically traits that are impacts of child emotional neglect. And this one's going to be how to treat yourself. It's good to have someone to talk to process these emotions, but you don't have to, because emotions are in your body. And when you've lived a life of invalidating yourself because you were raised to invalidate your own emotions, with childhood emotional neglect, there's a strong sense of rejection and invalidation and low self-worth and an inability to empathize with people, so lack of fulfilling relationships and a sense of loneliness and aloneness and a sense of emptiness, because that emptiness that you have within you is the invalidation that you experienced when you were younger. So how do you heal these wounds? How do you create a healthier sense of self is really what it comes down to. If we look at developmental psychology, ages 0 to 7 are developmental years. From 8 to 25 are socializing years. These are the years when identity is formed. And if you have emotional neglect syndrome, then your identity is going to be not well developed, to put it that way. You don't have a strong sense of self. Because as children from 0 to 7, our whole life is emotional based. And if our emotions are honored, then we don't learn to trust our own emotions and identify with our emotions, which is the foundation of our personality. Because there's a value system within the emotions. We want to know what it feels like to be safe. We want to know what it feels like to be nurtured and supported. We want to know what it's like to feel validated and confident, to be able to trust ourselves. And if your emotional sense of self is not developed, you're not going to have a lot of confidence or trust in yourself or a degree of empathy because of this emptiness you feel or a feeling of rejection. So we need to first, step 1 is become aware that you even have feelings in the first place, which is the in-body experience. Become present to how you feel in your body. Just get tuned into your breath. Are you breathing heavy? Are you breathing light? If you're sitting down, feel the seat or sofa that you're sitting on. Feel the sensations on the back of your legs and your butt. If you're leaning back against a chair, feel the support of the chair on your back. Feel the air around you. What's the temperature like? Look at the lighting. Are there any sounds? Really get into the present moment and then tune into your body. What does your body feel like? What's your breath like? Are you tense anywhere? Just allow yourself to feel the sensations in your body and become present to what you're feeling. Emotions are ultimately a felt sense. It's a sensation in the body that your brain is going to interpret through what's called the parietal lobe, which is the part of the brain that basically processes sensations in the body, combined with the limbic system, which is your emotional self. Those neural pathways need to get promoted. They need to grow, essentially, through what's called neuroplasticity. And the more mindful you are of the bodily sensations, then the more that part of the brain begins to process your emotions. And you may have been suppressing your emotions for a long time, so this may take time to do. Perhaps you drink alcohol to suppress the feelings of rejection, or smoke pot, or do things like that, have bad habits, eating habits, eat a whole lot to stifle the feelings of low self-worth and invalidation. This often accompanies childhood emotional neglect, these types of bad habits, even with trauma, because trauma, the emotions are even worse. And it's, feeling agony, feeling anguish, feeling anger, rage, fear, guilt, and shame is, not something that everyone wakes up to want to feel. So we often suppress bad feelings with bad habits. So you got to get into the good habit and develop good habits of feeling your body. Now, the next step is to write down what you're feeling. First, the quality of the experience. Is it heavy? Is it light? Do you feel a tingly sensation? Is it hot? Is it cold? Do you feel a sense of hardness and tension? Or do you feel a sense of softness and sensitivity within you? Is the feeling moving around, or is it just staying in one place in your body? How do you know you're feeling this? And write it down so you can put it into words. Part of the problem with childhood emotional neglect is you don't have a language for your emotions. So it's hard for you to express how you feel and emote your beingness so you can relate to others effectively. So this is really developing what's called emotional intelligence. And getting to know your feelings is the first step to becoming aware that you even have them. A lot of people with childhood emotional neglect and trauma have a sense of disassociation from reality, a sense of it's like you're watching yourself like you're watching a movie. Everything occurs to you as if it's just a movie. So when you connect with people, you don't really connect with how they're feeling. You may not really consider the depth of what they're saying to you because you're just observing it like the outsider looking in. And getting into your body is going to be almost maybe confrontational for you. It may be a wake-up call to, wow, I never knew I felt so angry or I felt so sad. And knowing your feelings, because your emotions are telling you something. Your emotions is your body telling you what's going on with itself in response to the world. There are 6 basic emotions described from infants. That is disgust, surprise, anger, joy. I'm getting a brain fart right here, but there's 6 basic emotions, and you can look them up. Now, everything after that is really a story, an exaggeration that the mind produces as a result of these 6 base emotions. And any type of drama that you may experience, there is a base emotion underneath that, and try to feel those emotions. Surprise, anger, disgust, joy. I still can't remember them. Oh well. So now you know I'm not reading off a script in this video here. So just get in tune with how you feel, and then write it down. Put a language: anger, disappointment, surprised, sadness, heavy, guilt, ashamed. Whatever the feeling is, write it down. And this way, your cognitive mind can begin to process these emotions and become more aware of how you actually feel. And by naming them, it's going to enable you to not drown in them. A lot of people, these suppressed emotions come to the surface and they're overwhelming, and you feel like you're drowning in them. So writing them down is going to help you process them more effectively. Now, the third step is to express them to people. Begin to tell people how you feel, and then get used to expressing your emotions. And ask other people how they feel. Get used to relating to people at an emotional level. And this way, your interactions with others begin to become more fulfilling, more intimate, and more emotionally based, more empathetic. And then the fourth one is to find out what triggers you. Find out what makes you feel afraid of being vulnerable. What scares you about sharing your feelings? Is it the way a person talks? They're reminding you of your father or your mother. Really get into what triggers you, because there's always a triggered response, something that just gets you riled up. And what is that something? Become aware of that. And then understand that that's just a response to that stimulation. Whether the fear was real, it's usually a fear based response. That's the other one of the 6 base emotions. Is the fear real? I mean, is there an actual threat to your life and well-being? Or is it just psychological? Is your mind taking a scenario and thinking of the worst case potential of that and imagining all of these things that may happen, but isn't actually happening? And become aware of that. Whatever triggers you is going to be a fear response. And understand that there are 2 types of fear: psychological and then actual fear. The fear of public speaking is the biggest fear in humanity. It's really the fear of public humiliation. And that, out of all fears, is the biggest fear in people. So you may want to face your fears. If that's what triggers you, maybe it's spiders, maybe it's dogs, maybe it's a person yelling. Expose yourself to it little by little. Maybe if it's a person yelling, maybe watch a TV show where a person is yelling. So you can actually just witness it and be like, well, they're not yelling at me. It's just a character on the screen is yelling. But you expose yourself to it gradually. Expose yourself to the trigger where you desensitize yourself. This way it doesn't upset you anymore. It doesn't cause you upset. Being ignored is a big one with people with childhood emotional neglect. Because when you feel ignored, it's flat out rejection. They're not calling me back. They didn't answer. They're ignoring you, and that could trigger, you can get really angry over that. So understand that maybe a person isn't ignoring you intentionally. Maybe they just have a lot going on in their own life and just failed to get back to you. And did you form an agreement for them to get back to you within a certain time? If not, then they don't have to get back to you because they never agreed to. But if they usually get back to you within a couple of days and they don't, then something is off, and ask them, hey, you usually get back to me within 2 days. What's going on? Is something happening? And you'll probably think it's about you. Did I say something? Did I do something to offend you? Most of the time it's no, it's just I've got 3 kids to feed, or, whatever the problem is in their life is just taking up their time, which is the same thing that happened with your parents when you're younger. They're preoccupied with paying bills, taking care of the mortgage and their job, that they neglected you. So that often is a trigger, being ignored, when people blow you off. If people are blowing you off, it's usually because you're a people pleaser, and people will always leave, groups of social circles will leave the people pleaser out of the picture. You find yourself inviting yourself rather than being invited. People pleasing comes with childhood emotional neglect. Because of the invalidation, you seek to please other people. And become aware of your own behavioral patterns, in other words. By becoming aware of your behavioral patterns, you'll understand how you're coming across to others. And what's driving that behavior is a need for validation. So you learn how to validate yourself from the beginning steps that I mentioned earlier by becoming aware of how you feel. And understanding your emotions and understanding what they're saying. Most of the time, your emotions are telling you that you want to feel safe. You want to feel comfortable. You want to feel, most people's sense of comfort is familiarity. I mean, you'll find people's sense of comfort could be abuse. They'll go from one abusive relationship to another simply because it's familiar. And a loving, nurturing relationship may scare them because it's unfamiliar. So get to know that side of yourself too. Are you afraid of wholesome people, of a wholesome lifestyle, of people who actually care about you, people who actually talk to you, look at you in the eye, and are fully present with you, and showing love and showing concern and having empathy? Do you have an aversion to those people because it's unfamiliar? Often we are afraid of the unfamiliar rather than being afraid of something that is actually threatening. So that's part of getting triggered, understanding that this is just unfamiliar to you. And familiarizing yourself with the circumstance is going to help you overcome your fear of it or your aversion to it. It's all part of the dynamics of childhood emotional neglect. Your parents rejected you. You, in turn, took that on by rejecting your own emotions. You grew up believing your emotions and how you feel don't matter. And that's caused a lot of problems in your relationships, and that's why you feel empty and isolated. So you got to tune into your own feelings and process them and name them and validate your own feelings. That this is what really brings you joy. This is what really brings you a sense of nurturance. This is what really brings you a sense of safety. What gives you, and then validate that in your life. Your emotions, usually anger, there's a sense of victimhood behind anger. And a victimhood is a sense of powerlessness because you wanted to feel safe and you didn't. So how do you make yourself feel safe? How do you relax? Often sadness is an inability to relax. You're afraid to feel sadness because the grief can be so deep, but allowing yourself to just rest is often underneath sadness, believe it or not. So you learn to interpret your own emotions more effectively to understand what your needs really are. Perhaps your irritation is you're actually hungry. And that's a mild form of discomfort. It's usually the extreme forms of discomfort, the rage, the extreme outbursts, the extreme paranoia that really bothers you. But even with smaller emotions like irritation, is it something that bothers you because you know a person's lying to you and you know they continue to lie to you, or is it because you're hungry? So you learn to interpret your emotions and what they're telling you because they are telling you something. And familiarizing yourself, the more you familiarize yourself with your emotions, the more comfortable you'll be feeling them, and the wiser you will be because you'll be able to interpret them. You'll develop what's called emotional intelligence. Then you're going to develop empathy. You're going to tune into other people's feelings and how they're feeling and how you impact them and how what you say and how you behave actually affects how they feel. And getting in tune with them and relating to them with what makes them feel safe, what makes them feel comfortable, what gives them joy, what gives them fulfillment, what gives them a feeling of gratitude and appreciation. And then you'll be able to have deeper levels of connection with others. And life will be more fulfilling, and your life won't feel so empty anymore. Now, easier said than done. I laid out the steps so you can become aware of them. Having a journal, write things down, how your days go, what you've tried, what you've discovered about how you feel or what you're feeling, so you can keep track of them. Now, another great way to really tune into your body to understand what you're feeling, to even become aware of what you're feeling, is yoga. Doing yoga, stretching in a very peaceful setting allows you to quiet your mind so you can tune in to how you're feeling in your body. Exercise is good, but usually the adrenaline goes, the dopamine goes, the heart rate increases. You're not really feeling your emotions. You're just feeling the energy that the body is beginning to produce as a result of exercising, which is a great feeling, but it isn't that deep feeling that you want to get to. Vipassana meditation, a style of Buddhist meditation, which actually meditates on the sensations, is another great way. Jack Kornfield has some wonderful meditation tapes. There's Goenka's 11-day Vipassana meditation retreat. It's basically some Buddhist meditation. They don't teach you to repress like yoga. It teaches you to embrace anything that arises, but it's really a body-based meditation. You meditate upon the sensations of the body. You need to develop a body awareness to develop emotional awareness, to develop an understanding in the language of the emotions so you can empathize with others, deepen your relationships with people, and get rid of that feeling of emptiness and develop your self-confidence and self-worth. Your emotions are valuable. Your emotions are important. Value them and your self-worth will come back to you. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'm a transformational life coach, and I specialize in helping clients with trauma. And if this is something you can relate to, you understand the impact that it has, because you want to experience success, you want to experience fulfillment, and you want to experience peace and happiness. And it's just something is getting in the way. This is what's getting in the way. Is you need to process these emotions to move on with your life, to move forward in your life, to level up. You need to heal these wounds within you. If you're interested in getting a complimentary consultation, my information will be below this video. I sure hope that helps. This is Dr. Spencer Coaches. Thank you so much for listening.